Welcome back. In the next couple of videos, we are going to set up a little progression bar here at the bottom, which allows us to see at which exercise we currently are. And this is something that I want to do dynamically. So it shouldn't be something we have to manually change. If we want to change the amount of exercises that we have, it should really be done dynamically. So what we're going to use for that is going to be a recycler view. And that's why we looked at recycler views, because they are great to basically have lists, right? And display lists. So in order to work with it, I will need to prepare it, okay? And therefore, I'm going to have a new XML file, as well as I will need to make a change to my activity exercise XML. So let's first of all look at how one particular item is going to look like. Okay, so I'm going to call this one item exercise status. Okay, and this item exercise status will not be a constrained layout, but it will just have a text view in it. Okay, so text view like so, and this text view will need to use namespaces, because here XML and S Android, which will be HTTP, and then the res Android, this one here. And then we'll need another namespace, and let me put it into a different line. And by the way, let's close this text view like so. And we need to add the tools namespace here, and a width and height. So I'm going to set that to 25 dp. I'm going to give it an ID of text view item. I'm going to add a little bit of margin of 1 density pixels towards all directions. I will create a background, which will be a drawable. So let me create this drawable. Create resource file. Now let's look at what this is. This is just going to be a shape with a solid content. Okay, and the solid content will just have a color, which will be our primary gray. I think this color primary, this gray color, yes. And then, or actually no, I want to make it lighter. So let's use something like C4, 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 all right, which will be this light gray color. And the shape should have a shape of oval. Okay, so here shape oval. And we've seen that multiple times, right? But that's what I want to have as the background for my individual item. So an individual item will basically just be a number, because we want to know at which number of exercises we are. And currently, if you look at it, well, let me make sure that my apps are closed, because what we have right now is that we don't display the exercises. We don't know at which exercise we're at. So we're at jumping jacks, but is jumping jacks number 1, number 2, number 3? We don't know that. And we could, of course, also just enter or display the number out of total, but we're going to add a recycler view, which will make it look a lot nicer. Okay, so now I have the background for my exercise. I want it to be gravitated, so the content of it to be gravitated. I will have a little bit of padding so that this circle is going to look a little bigger. You can see it here. It's just this circle, and I'm going to have our dark gray color as the text color. The text size will be 14 SP. The text style will be bold, and the text that I want to display is going to be a 1. Okay, so you see, this is basically going to be how one individual item is going to look like. And now they should be next to each other. So I want to have 12 of these items next to each other. And usually how you would use a recycler view is like a list view that you can scroll through, right? So something that you would use, for example, in Facebook or so, right? Where you have this big scroll view. But you can use recycler views also to display multiple different items next to each other if you want to do that dynamically, as it is what we want to do. All right, now let's set up a recycler view in our activity exercise, because it should basically be at the very bottom. So here underneath my very bottom frame layout, underneath this one here, which contains this linear layout inside of it, I'm going to set up a recycler view, which is this Android X recycler view widget. It needs a width, so I'm going to say it should be matching the parent, and it should only wrap the content, so it shouldn't be higher as it requires. All right, then it will need an ID so that we can access it, and I'm going to call it RV for RecyclerView exercise status. Then it needs to have constraints and a margin. So this should actually be an ID. So at ID, like so, RV exercise status, and there's a plus that is missing. And then we can go ahead and add the layout margin towards all directions, which I'm going to set to 5 density pixels. And then I need to add a constraint. So top to bottom of the FL exercise view. So it should be underneath our frame layout exercise view, which is this frame layout here. So now you will see that we now have this item which is underneath it. Okay, and then it's going to be underneath, but it should also be on top of the parent. So the bottom should be at the bottom of the parent, so to speak. So bottom at bottom of parent. Otherwise, you saw that it would just disappear. All right, so this is how a recycler view generally looks like. And now what we want to happen is that it, of course, will not display it like a recycler view like this, but it should be displaying the data in a horizontal fashion. So right next to each other. And now we will also need to get rid of this bottom to bottom off, because for our frame layout, by the way, for this FL exercise view, because otherwise it would overlap. So now we should be good to go. Even though it doesn't look great here, but it's all right, because it will be fine once we get into the actual application and going to use it. Okay, so this was just a setup. Now we can go ahead and use the recycler view, and therefore we will need to create an adapter and so forth. So let's do that in the next video.